grasshopper, which is at your feet.
Hello, Jim Matthews from GlassHopper.com. This little project incorporates two techniques that are both new to the video series. One is called fossil vitra, a flowery name for what is also known as organic burn-off. Here, we position selected vegetable matter in an appealing design, coat it with glass powder, and fire face down on fiber paper. The organic matter burns away and leaves its image vitrified in the fired powder. The second technique is kiln carving, cutting shapes from fiber paper and using them to form sculpted impressions in the glass. I'm combining both in a single project here to make a decorative wall sculpture called a spirit tablet. I'm ready to cut this oval, and I could approach it like a circle. Score the complete circumference, run the entire score, then use relief scores to break it out. But this is opaque, hand-cast glass, so I'm going to take a more cautious approach. I'll treat it like two big, gentle curves and a couple of leftover points. This way is also a good choice for small circles, anything smaller than my open hand, say, because there's not enough flex in the glass to easily run the score by pressing on the back side. Then we'll just negotiate the leftover ends, introduce them to the grinder briefly, and move on. I did that twice for a top layer and a bottom. And I'm going to glue them together with little dabs of Elmer's. And while that's drying, I'll prepare a piece of fiber paper for the fossil vitra application. This is 1/8 inch 3mm fiber paper, also called fiber blanket. It has a smoother side and a rough side. The fiber paper goes on the kiln shelf, smooth side up, and I'll trace the perimeter of my tablet template onto the fiber paper. Now it's time to introduce our selected vegetable matter. Look for material that has enough surface area to bear the glass powder. It has to be strong enough to support the weight of your adhesive and the powder as you move it into position, and it needs to be fairly flat. This particular species worked well, Glasshoppera backyardius. It was fairly flat to begin with, and then I pressed it in a book to boot. Then, astute and canny designer that I am, I cut a piece of scrap glass to position where my fiber impression would eventually be, just so I could place my flora in relation to it while I composed. Here's where I ended up, keeping in mind that because I'm firing face down, my design would wind up as a mirror image of what I'm looking at here. Next, I'll lift these pieces one at a time, spray them with adhesive, coat them with powder, and then carefully replace them in the same position they are now. Marking that position before I start is important. In the past, I've used Mom's everyday cheap hairspray to adhere the glass powder to the leaves, and it works great. But today I'm going with the heavy artillery, Mom's super extra strength Sunday church-going hairspray. I'm hoping it'll help minimize the amount of powder that falls off the leaves onto the fiber paper. So I sprayed my element, moved it to a clean piece of paper, and gave it a coat of black powder. See me tilt it there to lose any powder that wasn't glued down? Then I held it aside and gave it another light spray and another coat of powder. The second coat is optional, but I like a darker, less splotchy impression. Another little tilt. And then, with utmost care, place the element back into position on the fiber paper. This is where the powder is most likely to shake off and dirty the surface. I did okay that time. For each element, I repeated the process. Mark its position, spray and apply powder, Replace it in position. There, see the powder that's fallen off here? This would show up as black specks on the glass surrounding the stem and leaf shape. There are two things I can do. A little cleanup before firing. I've coated this toothpick in aloe vera gel. Anything sticky would do. And because I'm going to fire twice, between firings I can also clean up with a little light cold work. With extreme care, because this can knock powder off the leaves too, place the two-piece oval shape face down in position and proceed to cook. In this firing, we'll burn off the organic matter, fuse the powder to the base, and fuse the two base pieces together. A bubble squeeze will be important because we have two large surfaces face to face, so extra time for the air between those layers to escape out the sides is a good idea. This is what you'll see after firing on fiber paper. It'll come apart, stick to the glass. I spray it with water to keep the particles in check, then brush it into a trash can. It was about here that I coined a new vulgarity, because this was not supposed to be there, remember? It was for position only, and I never removed it. Ultimately, I decided to live with it. I put my fiber impression right on it and hoped it came out looking like that was the plan all along. But first, I had a little cleanup to do. This is just a small diamond bit in my Dremel tool. You know the drill. It will leave scratch marks, but since I'm firing again, they'll disappear. Next, I'll cut my fiber impression from the same kind of material we just fired on. Now, this is a template I've cut from clear plastic to transfer my image onto the fiber, and I'll cut that shape out of the center of this square. The background of the fiber image will press into the glass, leaving the Buddha image in relief. Another approach would be to use positives of both foreground and background so that both shapes impress into the glass, as was done here. I'm firing on fiber again because I want to use it to add additional texture and dimension. I traced the perimeter of my piece face up onto the fiber paper, and I've drawn a design line across the top. Now I'm marking the position of that line. My plan is to cut the fiber on that line and flip the top section over so that the textured backside fires its pattern into the glass. I'm also going to leave a gap between the top section and the bottom. This will cause a dimensional ledge of sorts to form between the two. Now I can go ahead and fix my fiber form in position. I'll use the spray adhesive again. And then to finish, I'm going to add some color to the top section. This is dark gray powder, the same color I chose for the back side of the piece. Now I can place my glass with the fiber form glued to it down on the fiber. See the gap I've left between the two sections? Tiny adjustments, and off to the firebox. Here we go. Now, this is stray powder that will knock right off. Well, I will say that I managed to make my mistake look like it was planned, though I would never have planned it this way. The impression came out clean and distinct. I fired it only to 1400 Fahrenheit. If you go too hot on fiber, fabric debris will lodge in the glass surface, and it's kind of awkward convincing your customer that it's supposed to be that way. Here's a close-up of my little ridge. I like that detail. Now, these spirit tablets are attractive, saleable projects, and the techniques, fossil vitra and kiln carving, are both rich with artistic possibilities. I hope you'll experiment with them on your own and have a great time doing so. Until next time, and always, I thank you so much for your support.